what's very concerning is that the Kim regime has been also at the same time threatening preemptive use or preemptive attack on South Korea while being focused on tactical nuclear weapons. So Kim Jong-un himself said these weapons could be used for secondary purpose, right? If North Korea's interests are threatened. So this kind of threat is really taking a page right out of Putin's playbook, right? Putin has been using a threat of nuclear retaliation to deter United States and the world from fully supporting Ukraine. So I think Kim Jong-un has sort of seen this and is taking a page out of. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I'm a little bit late, so I'm a little frazzled. Great to be here today. Thanks to News One Forum for inviting me here today to give this briefing on overview of North Korea's nuclear missile program and recommendations. So we'll begin with the status of North Korea's nuclear program. So the nature of North Korea's nuclear missile program and capabilities obviously have evolved since U.S. first established extended deterrence relationship with North Korea, and since North Korea first crossed the threshold, the twin threshold of developing a thermonuclear weapon and intercontinental ballistic missile in 2017. And you can see this on the right here, the picture of the ICBM when they first tested it in 2017. So since then, and since really the failure of the Hanoi summit in 2018, or 2019 was the Hanoi summit, North Korea continues to push qualitatively and quantitatively refining and expanding the missile program. Per Kim Jong-un's Eighth Party instructions at the Congress, at the Eighth Party Congress in January of 2021. North Korea is diversifying its missile arsenal. They have tested new missile capabilities, such as submarine-launched ballistic missile, new surface-to-air defense missile system, long-range strategic nuclear-capable cruise missile, train-mounted ballistic missile, hypersonic missiles, all of these different kind of missiles to really perfect its own missile and deterrent capabilities and to really be able to defeat American missile defenses. And here I just giving you just an example when they first tested train-mounted ballistic missile. Just for example, these missiles obviously increase survivability of their ballistic missile force from successful preemptive first strike, right? So we all know North Korea is a heavily mountainous region. It possesses a widely distributed rail network, hundreds of tunnels, and rail-accessible remote facilities that can provide excellent locations to conceal and support operations of rail mobile ballistic missiles. And I was going to play the video, but I guess we can't because this is a PowerPoint. And in the past year alone, right, in 2020, North Korea tested nearly 100 missiles, some 70 ballistic missiles, with a goal of securing credible, survivable second strike capability. So we know, like for example, on October 4th last year, North Korea carried out its longest ever missile demonstration. That's an intermediate range ballistic missile, which flew over 4,500 kilometers and was on air for 22 minutes, a missile that can clearly reach US territory of Guam. This was the third time that North Korea launched a ballistic missile designed to carry a nuclear warhead over Japanese territory. Of course, then in November, we saw North Korea launching 2 intercontinental ballistic missiles, including Hwasong-17, the largest road mobile liquid-fueled ICBM in the world. It flew nearly 1,000 kilometers, that's about 621 miles. It reached a maximum altitude over 6,000 kilometers, which means it really has range of 15,000 kilometers and 500 kilogram payload, missile that can hit and target anywhere in the continental United States. And I will just note that this missile is notable in that it is designed to carry multiple warheads, carrying up to 4 nuclear warheads, which means the North is one step closer to having the ability to one day complete multiple warheads payloads, which will allow North Korea to really stress and overcome US missile defenses. And perfecting this so-called multiple independent targetable reentry vehicle, MIRV capability, it really makes sense from North Korean perspective if you think about it. Why not have ability to both hit Manhattan and Washington at the same time? So these missiles are certainly more cost effective than missiles with single warheads. And this MIRV capability will again frustrate limited US missile defenses and really enhance North Korea's ability to strike US mainland with nuclear missiles, making North Korea just one of 3 countries in the world, along with China and Russia, to possess this dangerous capability. At the same time, obviously, North Korea is working on missiles that can launch faster and are more difficult to detect and are harder for our ballistic missile defenses to stop. So in December, Kim Jong-un personally oversaw the first test of a powerful solid fuel rocket engine. This is also a crucial new capability for the country because solid fuel missiles are, again, they are deadlier because North can prepare to launch them more quickly, and this means that there will be less time for the United States and its allies to be able to conduct a preemptive strike in the event of any kind of imminent North Korean missile attack. And come 2023, we have some 30 tests from North Korea, and again, this weapons development persists, right? We have dozens round of missile tests, and here you can see the kind of different missiles that they've tested, including cruise missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads, and short-range missiles, submarine-launched cruise missile, and so on. And most recently, and I think this is very important test, on April 13th, North Korea successfully carried out its first ever flight test of a Hwasang-18 solid fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, which means, and they call this a miraculous success. This is North Korean, they themselves called it that, right? An improvement on its ability to mount quick nuclear counterattack. Most of North Korea's ballistic missiles use liquid fuel, and that means it requires hours of fueling at the launch site prior to use, right? So it has previously tested liquid-fueled Hwasang-14, Hwasang-15, Hwasang-17. This makes it easier for the United States to detect, and conceivably, if we see North Korea about to launch an attack, we can preempt it, we can potentially defend against it, we can if necessary, retaliate. But this new solid fuel Hwasang-18, propelled by chemical mixture of fuel and oxidizer, does not require fueling prior to launch, which means it can be hidden more readily. So it can be hidden more readily, which means also it can be employed much faster, dramatically reducing the time to detect a launch and to really limit our ability to respond in a crisis in a timely manner, right? Because when you think about it, liquid fuel ICBMs needs to be employed within short period after fueling, whereas solid fuel missiles are much more shelf stable. And that's kind of a term like in grocery stores when you say shelf stable. It means that it can sit in a storage or it can be hidden in a silo. They're fueled, ready to go. And so if solid fuel missiles are deployed, the North will gain a potent new weapon, which threatens the United States and South Korea and of course Japan. So this is a very concerning development. I think it's important for me to make a point that the full capabilities of North Korea's ICBMs remain unclear, right? North Korea test fired many ballistic missiles of varying ranges that I just talked about. And clearly it has a capacity to strike continental United States. But it's not clear that North Korea has mastered the steps necessary to top a rocket with a warhead that can withstand the kind of harsh conditions of atmospheric re-entry that can accurately strike targets. In the case of Hwasang-18, This is a 3-stage missile, and North Korea has successfully tested the first 2 stages, right? That's boost phase, mid-course phase in the waters of North Korea's east coast, but it has not yet tested the final phase. Thus, North Korea could still face difficulties in ensuring that the missile does accurately target. But that said, I think the point I'm trying to make here is while the last sort of the technical milestone of this solid fuel ICBM may not be the game changer per se, the test still marks an important advance in North Korea's goal to build a nuclear arsenal that directly threatens the United States. So with this testing of solid fuel technology, what it shows is that over time, North Korea's missiles in the last several years, their technology has improved, and it's not just in quantity, right, 100 tests and so on, but really it shows their sophistication and range of this missile capability. So now they pose credible threat to U.S. homeland, despite we have obviously missile defense systems. And this, it's obviously a chart that shows the previous 6 nuclear tests. And the concern here, we've been all waiting for the 7th nuclear test potentially. That's potentially a tactical nuclear weapon. And this is a concern because North Korea has been really focused also on tactical nuclear weapons in the past year. They've outlined this in their 5-year plan, but North Korea is seeking smaller, lighter, miniaturized nuclear warheads on short-range missiles for tactical use. So consider North Korea's test in April of last year, right? When it tested nuclear-capable tactical guided missiles. They tested 8 missiles at that time with different ranges, with 5 different locations, really targeting sites like Pyeongtaek to Busan, really demonstrating their ability to deploy tactical nuclear weapons. And then, of course, we saw similar such tests in September and in October of last year to really simulate North Korea's trying to shower South Korea with tactical nuclear weapons. And these tests, what's concerning about that is that it just doesn't look like it's just a developmental testing. It looks like it's more of an operational testing, operational readiness, operational deployment of short-range missiles with miniaturized nuclear warheads that's intended to target various places in South Korea. And what is also very concerning on top of all of this, right, missile technology improving and the focus on tactical nuclear weapons, what's very concerning is that the Kim regime has been also at the same time threatening preemptive use or a preemptive attack on South Korea while being focused on tactical nuclear weapons. So we've seen Kim Jong-un ominously warning that the regime envisions a wider role for their arsenal beyond deterrence, beyond self-defense, right? So Kim Jong-un himself said these weapons could be used for secondary purpose, right? If North Korea's interests are threatened. So this kind of threat is really taking a page right out of Putin's playbook, right? Putin has been using a threat of nuclear retaliation to deter United States and the world from fully supporting Ukraine. So I think Kim Jong-un has sort of seen this and is taking a page out of that. But the reason why all of this focus on tactical nuclear weapons and preemptive use should concern us, United States and South Korea and our alliance, is that what is the purpose of these tactical nuclear weapons, right? Tactical nuclear weapons are aimed at ultimately achieving one of North Korea's long-standing goals. And what is that? It is to decouple US-ROC alliance. What do I mean by that? I don't think it's inconceivable. Well, let's just put it this way. It's not inconceivable that Kim Jong-un may calculate that one day in the future, not now, because Kim Jong-un, I think, believes that under the Biden administration, it's not necessarily now, but can you envision a future scenario where we have a different president, perhaps an isolationist-leaning president with isolationist leading U.S. public. Like, this is not a far-fetched scenario. We could re-elect President Trump or somebody else who have isolationist leanings. That if they can threaten United States, and let's say if there's a potential troop withdrawal from South Korea, by threatening preemptive use, that can calculate, as long as North Korea holds ICBM in reserve and making threats against US mainland, that it will not necessarily lead to escalation. That this might be Kim Jong-un's calculation, right? That they can somehow deter nuclear retaliation in kind by Washington. That somehow under certain conditions that US simply does not have will to defend South Korea. Or you've heard this cliche that maybe US is not willing to risk San Francisco for Seoul or Seattle for Seoul and so on. So ultimately what Kim Jong-un is trying to achieve is to make it too costly, too risky for Washington to come to South Korea's aid in a future crisis, right? So he may be hoping that a future US president, right, will not respond to a North Korean attack on South Korea because he's too concerned about a North Korean nuclear attack on US mainland or US bases in Asia. So again, concern here is that Kim Jong-un might be encouraged by Putin's nuclear saber rattling to imagine that US could be somehow forced to back off. So in the Ukraine conflict, while the whole world came to aid of Ukraine, still there's a line drawn in terms of how much we are supporting, right? We're not sending troops in Ukraine and so on. So US military has not provided long-range weapons to Ukraine or sending troops to Ukraine out of a concern that it will escalate into a nuclear conflict. So again, this could be something like what Kim Jong-un could be potentially miscalculate or thinking about. And of course, adding to all of this, the missile capability improving, the focus on tactical nuclear weapons, the focus on preemptive use. Now they had there was an announcement of new nuclear doctrine on September 9th of last year when they announced 5 conditions in which it will launch a preemptive strike, effectively stating a new first use doctrine for its nuclear weapons. And these conditions include not just when there's a perceived preparations for nuclear strike. This even includes non-nuclear strike on leadership. So again, a very concerning development. Here, essentially, what Kim Jong-un has done is dramatically lower the threshold for its use of nuclear weapons. Again, the 5 conditions that they laid out is a significant departure from the previous law enacted in 2013. And then in addition to announcing the new law, Kim Jong-un sought to further cement its nuclear power status by saying that North Korea would never give up nuclear weapons, that their nuclear program is now irreversible, it's non-negotiable. So in short, this new legislation, through this new legislation, North Korea has now laid out the legal groundwork that there will be no future talks if it's about denuclearization, while dramatically, again, lowering the threshold for its use of nuclear weapons. And in terms of the effects of Ukraine war in North Korean foreign policy, for North Korea, obviously, Ukraine conflict only further underscored the importance of keeping nuclear weapons for its security, right? But in addition to that, I think another lesson for North Korea is that current external environment is actually favorable for the Kim regime in some sense to continue to go down on this path of nuclear and missile program, modernizing their arsenal, expanding their program. Because intensified US-China competition and Russia's invasion of Ukraine all really have made the situation the region much more bifurcated, more polarized. So we see an uneasy alliance between Putin and Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. And now it's, in a way, external environment is favorable for North Korea, right? Because even at the United Nations Security Council, there's no resolution whatsoever. Even with an ICBM launch, they couldn't even agree to have a resolution. And of course, Russia and China are not implementing sanctions. They're not really willing to pressure North Korea. So external environment is favorable for North Korea. So I think this is why this kind of shifting geostrategic landscape has really made, it's calling for to reconsider, just the allies to reconsider traditional approaches of dealing with North Korea, right? We have now concerns about what to do with this. Like, can we just stick with the traditional approach? And the problem is we have a very few options left, right? We have 5 U.S. administrations that have gone. We have tried from, bilateral negotiation under the Clinton administration to multilateral negotiations under Bush administration, the 6-party talks, the Obama administration's strategic patience policy, with Trump administration's maximum pressure to shift to symmetry and diplomacy, even sitting down with Kim Jong-un face-to-face 3 times. So what options do we have left? And I think this is why now you're seeing more talk about what we can do, how, in terms of strengthening extended nuclear deterrence options, and what is possible. And you're hearing more from the South Korean public, their willingness to do something more, right? Whether it's bringing tactical nuclear weapons back to South Korea or developing their own indigenous nuclear capability. These are some of the options that are being considered from South Korean perspective, right? It's been talked about, like this nuclear sharing with South Korea, this NATO, so-called NATO-style nuclear sharing that U.S. does with NATO allies. That is this a potential possibility? This is one of the options that's been talked about, and I think this is sort of. We'll see what President Biden and President Yoon, they're about to announce a joint statement, and they're probably going to have a standalone document on extended deterrence. But one of the options was like this so-called NATO-style nuclear sharing with South Korea. And then, of course, another option that's been talked about or discussed is bringing tactical nuclear weapons back to South Korea. Since tactical nuclear weapons in the past, they were in South Korea, we pulled it back. They were all removed in 1991, but there's at least a discussion about whether this should be a possibility. And then of the last option, which obviously the U.S. government does not support at this point, is South Korea developing its own indigenous nuclear capability. But then it has its consequences. It could have potentially negative implications to this, right? So these are some of the things that's been at least discussed in the think tanks, in academic circles, and so on. And I don't think right now the Biden administration I don't think there's a pushback against this. So even though these are discussed, I think what's going to come out of this particular summit with President Biden and President Yoon right now is more about just reaffirming extended deterrence, maybe talking about how step-by-step U.S. and South Korea can improve on extended deterrence. And I think President Yoon, at this moment, at least for now, for this particular, in this time period, President Yoon will not just reaffirm South Korea's commitment to a non-proliferation treaty and not developing nuclear weapons, at least for now. But at least what we are talking about is now talking about at least doing much more on the extended deterrence front than that's possible, right? And so one of the consideration, and this is sort of, I just throw it out there for consideration, is potentially can we rotate in more nuclear capable weapon systems, such as the Ohio class submarine, P-52 bombers, the F-35 fighters, to South Korea? And can we do something like, and where we remain strategically ambiguous? Maybe we don't tell North Koreans what they are, whether so we are able to sort of strengthen extended deterrence without risking permanently stationing tactical nuclear weapons in South Korea or allowing South Korea to develop their own nuclear weapons capability. But maybe some sort of in-between solution is possible. But these are the kind of things that's being at least being discussed and we are thinking about. I'm running out of time, so we'll just be very quick on the sanctions front. I just wanted to, because I spent a lot of time talking about their North Korea's nuclear missile capability and extended deterrence, I just wanted to point out that North Korea, in meantime, is able to skirt sanctions. As I said, the external environment is favorable for North Korea because China, for sanctions to be effective, China and Russia have to implement sanctions, and they're not. So, right now they're being not enforced, even though technically about 90% of North Korea's exports should be illegal. Right now, the sanctions are not being implemented. And they still have a way to make money, right? All the illicit money-making activities, like here I'm talking about exporting meth, to all the illicit money-making activities. And then on top of it all, and this will just point out, I think something that we don't think about often is the cyber threat that's coming out of North Korea, because Kim Jong-un has really expanded this program. This is highly lucrative for North Korea. To continue down on this asymmetric. This is an asymmetric threat. This is also a way for the North Koreans to make money. Like in 2019, UN panel of experts talked about saying about $2 billion that North Korea has able to raise through cyber crimes. It's something that, in terms of policy, not only should we think about extended deterrence, but a way to curb the revenue that's going into North Korea for North Korea to be able to continue to expand their program. This is just talking about more on cyber attack, how it's been strengthening over years. And I don't think we need to belabor this point about what the North Koreans do. The main point here is that this is a priority for the Kim Jong-un regime, and they're quite serious about enhancing their cyber capability. And so for us, one of the policy option has to be not only on the missile defense front, not only on the strengthening extended deterrence front, but again, particularly now with sanctions not being implemented, we really have to cut off try to do a counter cyber, to counter their cyber efforts. This is just, if anybody interested, I will share this PowerPoint with you just to get more, it's just more detail on the cyber. So, I think the policy recommendations, again, in addition to defense, so we need to continue to do military exercises. We need to continue to strengthen our cooperation on a whole host front, counter-missile strategy that really focuses on detecting and defending against North Korean missiles. And again, which I didn't bring up, but I'll bring up now, strengthening trilateral cooperation among US, South Korea, and Japan. And here, I think from the Biden administration's perspective, I know it's very unpopular at home, President Yoon's decision to improve his relationship with Japan and the whole wartime labor issue, but it's being very much appreciated, at least in Washington, because we see it as one of the, in terms of policy, how to think about responding to North Korea. It's such a difficult issue, it's such a challenging problem that we think about. It's so important that we work with allies, like including Japan, in terms of working together to counter the missile threat that I began this entire presentation on, strengthening trilateral defense coordination between the US, South Korea, and Japan. So with that, I think my time is up. So thanks for your attention and giving me time to give this presentation. Thank you.